There is a language that flows quietly through your veins, ancient, symbolic, and largely forgotten. We've been taught to think of blood type as a sterile classification, useful only for medicine or emergency charts. But what if that classification whispered something deeper, something psychological, something archetypal? According to the symbolic insights of Marie-Louise von Franz, the body is not separate from the soul, it is one of its many voices. And blood, the river of life within us, is not exempt from this language of symbols. Modern science categorizes blood types as A, B, or O. But the psyche does not speak in sterile letters. It speaks in myths, patterns, and inner resonance. Within each type lies an unconscious attitude, a predisposed rhythm to how a person moves through life, processes emotion, and relates to others. These are not rigid roles, but subtle psychological tonestones that echo from the collective unconscious. The place Jung described as the vast ocean beneath our waking thoughts. When you begin to consider your blood type not as a medical label, but as an expression of symbolic truth, something shifts. A person with type O, for example, might unconsciously carry the spirit of the hunt of the lone survivor, driven by instinct and momentum. Type A, the organizer, may gravitate toward structure and ritual, seeking peace through internal and external order. Type B might drift into spaces of freedom and innovation, while AB walks the twilight path, never fully one thing or another, alchemical, paradoxical, whole. Von Franz believed that meaning is not imposed on life from the outside. It emerges from the depths. And so, even a scientific fact like your blood type becomes meaningful when viewed through a symbolic lens. The question is not simply, what is my type, but rather, what inner story does this blood tell? You are not just carrying oxygen and nutrients, you are carrying a myth, a personality imprint older than you, tied to your inner path. If you've ever felt a certain pull, a way of being that you didn't choose but somehow fits, this is not accident, it's the symbolic inheritance of your soul. The ancients understood that blood is sacred, they marked lineage, destiny, and power through it. We have forgotten, but the body has not. It remembers, and it speaks. To understand the meaning of your blood is to remember a truth, written not in books, but in the red currents of your own body. A truth that cannot be logically explained but only intuited, lived, and slowly revealed through the unfolding of your psychological journey. The human body is not just flesh and bone, it is a living text, inscribed with symbols the psyche uses to speak. Carl Jung understood this intimately. For him, the body was not separate from the soul, but rather its outer image, a mirror through which the unconscious reveals itself. Marie-Louise von Franz carried this insight further, recognizing that the body, in all its forms and functions, is a symbolic landscape where meaning takes shape without words. It is not the body itself that reveals destiny, but the patterns that emerge when we look at it with symbolic awareness. Blood, more than any other substance, holds this symbolism most vividly. It is the vehicle of life, the unseen river that sustains us. In dreams and myths, blood is never just blood, it is spirit, ancestry, sacrifice, renewal. Its flow through our veins is both literal and metaphorical, a hidden narrative of who we are and who we are becoming. Jung believed that our unconscious speaks in images, and the image of blood carries with it not just life force, but a message about our innermost nature. When we bleed, we are reminded of our mortality, but also our vitality. Blood connects the upper world of conscious thought with the lower depths of instinct and emotion. It bridges opposites, the sacred and the brutal, the healing and the wounding, the personal and the collective. Von Franz saw such opposites not as contradictions, but as invitations to wholeness, and the body, especially its internal processes like the circulation of bloodies, where these tensions play out. To know your blood type in this symbolic context is to glimpse an invisible map of your psychic inheritance. This is not fortune-telling. It is a poetic, intuitive recognition that the body speaks the language of the soul. Just as myths are populated by gods and monsters who represent inner forces, so too does your blood carry the imprint of archetypal energies. It says something about how you relate to the world, how you give and receive, how you fight, how you heal. Science tells us that blood delivers oxygen, regulates temperature, and wards off infection. But the psyche sees deeper. It sees blood as memory, as emotion, as truth moving silently within you. In moments of deep reflection or in dreams, when the unconscious rises to the surface, the body may suddenly feel not like a machine, but a message. And in that moment, the blood that pulses within you is no longer just biological. It is mythic. It is sacred. It is yours. There is something ancient in the blood of Type O, something that remembers the hunt, the wilderness, the first fire. This is the blood of the warrior, not in the superficial sense of conquest, but in the deeper psychic pattern of survival, instinct, and raw presence. Type O carries within it the archetype of the hunter, alert, focused, unyielding. In Jungian terms, this is an energy that emerges from the collective unconscious as a pattern of action, of forward momentum, of life lived on the edge of risk and reward. It is the blood that remembers how to lead when chaos reigns, how to fight when others hesitate. Those with Type O often feel pulled toward decisiveness, purpose, and movement. They act before they analyze. They choose direction before hesitation can enter the room. There is clarity in this kind of psyche, not born of intellect, but of instinct. It is not that they think less, but that thinking flows through the body first. The wisdom of their ancestors is alive in their bones, in the grip of their hands, in the will behind their eyes. Jung spoke of the archetypal hero's journey, the confrontation with the dragon of fear. The Type O individual often feels this call even when they do not understand its origin. They are not driven by dreams alone, but by the pulse beneath them. Yet, where there is light, there is shadow. And the shadow of the warrior is not subtle. It appears as dominance masked as confidence, control disguised as protection. What begins as leadership can curdle into tyranny. Type O, when unbalanced, may mistake power for truth, action for wisdom. The drive that once served survival can become a weapon turned inward or against others. Von Franz reminded us that our greatest gifts often contain the seeds of our downfall if they remain unconscious. The Type O personality must learn that force alone cannot bring peace, that strength must be tempered by reflection, and that leadership without humility becomes violence of the spirit. But when this archetype is honored rather than exploited, when the warrior walks not with the sword but with awareness, something beautiful emerges. This is the leader who protects without controlling, who risks without recklessness, who brings stability not through fear, but presence. The instinctual energy of Type O, when made conscious, becomes a beacon for others, a reminder that courage is not the absence of fear, but the will to move forward with heart wide open. To carry this blood is to carry an invitation, not to dominate the world, but to meet it fully. Not to conquer others, but to confront the self. It is an ancient rhythm, one that beats louder in the silence, urging you to remember, you were born to move, to act, to lead not from ego, but from soul. There is something ancient in the blood of Type O, something that remembers the hunt, the wilderness, the first fire. This is the blood of the warrior, not in the superficial sense of conquest, but in the deeper psychic pattern of survival, instinct, and raw presence. Type O carries within it the archetype of the hunter, alert, focused, unyielding. In Jungian terms, this is an energy that emerges from the collective unconscious as a pattern of action, of forward momentum, of life lived on the edge of risk and reward. It is the blood that remembers how to lead when chaos reigns, how to fight when others hesitate. Those with Type O often feel pulled toward decisiveness, purpose, and movement. They act before they analyze. They choose direction before hesitation can enter the room. There is clarity in this kind of psyche, not born of intellect, but of instinct. It is not that they think less, but that thinking flows through the body first. The wisdom of their ancestors is alive in their bones, in the grip of their hands, in the will behind their eyes. Jung spoke of the archetypal hero's journey, the confrontation with the dragon of fear. The Type O individual often feels this call even when they do not understand its origin. They are not driven by dreams alone, but by the pulse beneath them. Yet, where there is light, there is shadow. And the shadow of the warrior is not subtle. It appears as dominance masked as confidence, control disguised as protection. What begins as leadership can curdle into tyranny. Type O, when unbalanced, may mistake power for truth, action for wisdom. The drive that once served survival can become a weapon turned inward or against others. Von Franz reminded us that our greatest gifts often contain the seeds of our downfall if they remain unconscious. The Type O personality must learn that force alone cannot bring peace, that strength must be tempered by reflection, and that leadership without humility becomes violence of the spirit. But when this archetype is honored rather than exploited, when the warrior walks not with the sword but with awareness, something beautiful emerges. This is the leader who protects without controlling, who risks without recklessness, who brings stability not through fear, but presence. The instinctual energy of type O, when made conscious, becomes a beacon for others, a reminder that courage is not the absence of fear, but the will to move forward with heart wide open. To carry this blood is to carry an invitation, not to dominate the world, but to meet it fully. Not to conquer others, but to confront the self. It is an ancient rhythm, one that beats louder in the silence, urging you to remember, you were born to move, to act, to lead not from ego, but from soul. In the quiet current of type A blood, there is a different kind of strength, one not forged in battle, but in patience, presence, and care. This is the archetype of the healer, the harmonizer, the one who carries the sacred task of creating order out of the chaos of human emotion. Unlike the raw momentum of type O, type A moves inward first, attuned not to conquest, but to coherence. There is a deep sensitivity here, a psychic openness that feels before it speaks, that listens before it acts. It is a blood that remembers how to mend, how to soothe, how to hold. Carl Jung spoke often of the soul's need for balance, and those with type A often live as a quiet counterweight to the noise of the world. Their presence is rarely loud, but it is stabilizing. They bring shape to the formless, predictability to the unpredictable. This is not weakness, it is a deep psychic intelligence. It is the archetype of the inner architect, the builder of emotional foundations. Marie-Louise von Franz understood that such people often serve as containers for collective emotion, absorbing what others cannot process. It is both a gift and a weight. Yet here, too, lives the shadow. The desire for peace can become the fear of disruption. The gift of empathy can harden into self-erasure. Type A can lose itself in others, becoming so attuned to external needs that the inner voice goes silent. What seems like cooperation may in fact be quiet compliance, an unconscious trade of authenticity for acceptance. The wounds of type A are often invisible, buried under smiles and well-kept routines. But beneath that order may lie grief, the kind that grows when one has spent a lifetime tending everyone else's wounds, while neglecting their own. This repression is not born of weakness, but of survival. As children, many type A individuals learned that calmness brought safety, that being good earned love, and so they built walls of politeness, internalized rules of harmony, and became excellent at anticipating needs except their own. But as Jung would insist, what is denied does not disappear, it slips into the shadow and waits, until one day, the healer burns out, and the harmonizer breaks. The path forward is not to abandon their gifts, but to bring them into consciousness, to feel, without guilt, to say no, without apology, to trust that peace does not require self-sacrifice. The true power of type A lies not in perfection, but in presence. When aligned, this blood carries the sacred rhythm of healing, not just for others, but for the self. It holds the potential to create worlds where compassion has structure, and where sensitivity becomes strength. In this archetype lives the reminder that order, when rooted in love, can be the most radical force of all. Type B moves like a river untamed, winding through landscapes others fear to enter. There is something elusive in this blood, something that resists being pinned down or neatly defined. It carries within it the archetype of the seeker, the one who follows intuition over instruction, inspiration over tradition. Where others build walls, the type B soul opens windows. It is drawn to the unexplored, to the liminal spaces between what is and what could be. In Jungian terms, this is the archetype of the visionary, one who hears the music before it's composed, who senses the future as if it's already unfolding. Those with type B often possess a magnetic kind of individuality. They are not rebels for rebellion's sake, but because conformity feels like a cage. Freedom is not a luxury for them, it is air. They tend to resist rigid roles, preferring instead to shape their lives like art, imperfect, evolving, deeply personal. Marie-Louise von Franz would say such souls are in touch with the symbolic imagination. Their inner world is rich, textured, alive with possibility, and from this inner abundance flows originality, a creativity that defies replication. But the shadow walks closely. With such inner fluidity can come disconnection from others, from commitment, from the slow roots of reality. What looks like freedom can drift into avoidance. The visionary, when unmoored, becomes the escapist. Type B may shy away from depth, not out of apathy, but because anchoring feels like limitation. Their mind flies, but sometimes the body and heart are left behind. Jung warned that the gift of intuition, when not grounded, leads to inflation, believing the self to be untouchable, beyond the laws that govern human connection. The ego, if unchecked, becomes the artist's blindfold. Type B can grow enamored with its uniqueness, mistaking solitude for superiority. Relationships become difficult when the desire to remain unfixed outweighs the willingness to be fully seen. There is a loneliness hidden beneath this, the kind that grows when one's true self is always in motion, never held long enough to be met. And yet, when this energy is honored with awareness, something extraordinary happens. The seeker becomes a guide not away from life, but into its hidden corners. Type B shows us how to live without fear of contradiction, how to follow joy as a compass. They are the ones who remind the world that fluidity is not fragility, and that freedom, when grounded in love, can become the most creative force in existence. This blood does not ask for permission. It invites you to listen to the wind, to the dream, to the silence between two thoughts. To carry this type is to walk the edge between reality and vision, to live not in the rules of the past, but in the unfolding story of becoming. Not everyone will understand, but that is not the point. The seeker was never meant to follow paths. They were born to make them. Every strength carries within it the seed of its undoing. What empowers us also tempts us, and in each blood type lies not just a gift, but a shadow, a hidden distortion of that gift when it becomes unconscious, rigid, or over-identified. Marie-Louise von Franz taught that the shadow is not evil in itself, but unlived life. It is the energy we exile in order to appear whole, only to find that the very thing we hide begins to control us from beneath. Blood, too, is no exception. Beneath its symbolic rhythm lies a mirror, and not all of it reflects light. Type O, the instinctual warrior, radiates courage and action. But when unexamined, this drive calcifies into control, into a need to dominate rather than protect. What was once initiative becomes imposition. The Type O shadow is the refusal to yield, an intolerance for vulnerability disguised as decisiveness. It fears stillness, because stillness means confrontation with the self. Beneath the armor, often, lies a profound fear of powerlessness. Type A, the healer, seeks harmony but sometimes at the cost of truth. In its shadow, this type becomes the martyr, endlessly managing the emotions of others while abandoning its own. What appears as peace may in fact be fear of conflict, and what looks like patience may conceal suppressed resentment. The danger here is quiet erasure, slow forgetting of the self in the name of being needed. And the wound deepens in silence, because Type A rarely lets it be seen. Type B, the seeker, thrives on freedom, but the shadow of freedom is flight. When untethered, this type may avoid commitment not from selfishness, but from the terror of entrapment. Yet what is never claimed is never known. In the name of individuality, Type B may drift so far from others and from themselves that even joy begins to lose meaning. The very desire to escape conformity can become a prison of isolation. Type AB, the alchemical bridge, holds opposites but in shadow. That tension collapses into confusion. In trying to be everything, they may become nothing. Their ability to see all perspectives can make them vanish into ambiguity. Avoiding decisive action for fear of losing their wholeness, the danger is a spiritual dissociation, a withdrawal from life's demands in favor of inner abstraction. They become difficult to reach, even for themselves. Von Franz warned that whatever remains unconscious will manifest as fate. These shadow patterns, if ignored, do not go away. They solidify into personality traits, relational traps, and repeating narratives. But if we meet them, if we dare to turn and face the shape moving in the corner of our vision, they become something else. They become teachers. Each shadow is an unloved part of the self, not demanding punishment, but recognition. The task is not to eliminate the shadow, it is to integrate it. Only then can the blood carry not just the pattern of the past, but the promise of transformation. There is something otherworldly in the pulse of Type AB, something that does not quite belong to one realm or the other. It is the blood of contradiction, of paradox held in delicate tension, where Type O charges forward, and Type A builds order, where Type B wanders wide open. AB stands at the intersection. It is not either or, it is both. Jung might have called this the alchemical bridge, the place where opposites meet not to cancel each other, but to transform. Marie-Louise von Franz would have recognized in it the sacred task of uniting the fragmented parts of the self into something whole. This is the rarest blood, and fittingly so. Those who carry it often feel like they live between worlds, intellectual yet intuitive, social yet inward, grounded yet floating just beyond reach. They contain multiple voices, not in conflict, but in conversation. It is a complexity that cannot be easily named, and so they are often misunderstood. Others may sense the mystery before they see the person. AB does not announce itself, it reveals, slowly, through nuance, silence, and subtle intensity. There is a natural diplomacy in this type, a gift for perceiving multiple truths at once. Not because they are indecisive, but because they live in the liminal. They are attuned to the symbolic dimension, seeing not just what is, but what it might mean. They can sit with contradiction without needing to resolve it. This, in Jungian psychology, is the essence of alchemy, to hold tension without collapse, until something new is born. But this gift comes with its shadow. To live between poles is to risk losing center. Type A may struggle with identity, feeling both everything and nothing at once. The very fluidity that grants their insight can also dissolve their clarity. They can become mirrors for others, reflecting what is needed, but losing themselves in the process. In relationships, they may be idealized or misread, their inner world far more intricate than the roles they're assigned. And when overwhelmed, they may retreat not in anger, but in quiet vanishing. Disappearance becomes a way to protect the fragile architecture within. To be AB is to walk a spiritual path, whether one chooses it or not. This is not a type that clings to surface living. Their psyche seeks depth, seeks meaning, seeks integration. The challenge is to remain visible while carrying such internal multiplicity. The journey is not about choosing sides, but about weaving something sacred from both. When they live consciously, AB individuals become bridges, not just between people, but between worlds. They embody what the alchemists called the unused mundus, the one world where inner and outer spirit and matter, past and future, are no longer divided. Their presence is subtle, but it leaves a mark, not a loud one, but a lasting one, like a dream that stays with you long after waking. Without explanation, but full of meaning. In myth, blood is never only physical. It is sacred, binding, terrible. It seals oaths and breaks curses. It calls the gods and silences kings. Across cultures and centuries, the spilling or sharing of blood has marked moments of fate initiation, sacrifice, betrayal, rebirth. It is the symbol through which destiny speaks, and those ancient stories, echoing still in the depths of our psyche, carry an understanding of blood that we have nearly forgotten, not as mere biology, but as inheritance, as meaning, as mythic code. In Greek tragedy, bloodlines determined fate with brutal precision. The house of Atreus, haunted by cycles of murder and revenge, could not escape the stain of ancestral blood. There was no choice, only unfolding. Jung would say, this is the unconscious at work, a family shadow passed through generations like a hidden wound, bleeding behind the mask of reason. And in that mythic structure, we see a truth about ourselves, that something deeper than logic moves us, that our blood, our origins, carry stories that want to be lived, healed, or broken free from. Eastern myths carry a gentler, but no less powerful vision. In Japanese Shinto cosmology, blood spilled during divine creation becomes a source of life, not shame. The gods form mountains and rivers from what was lost. There is no curse, only transformation. Here, blood is not punishment, it is power. This view, symbolic in nature, suggests that what flows within us is not simply genetic matter, but spiritual matter. What if the different blood types are expressions of these mythic forces? Not categories of health, but inner blueprints of destiny. Marie-Louise von Franz would have urged us to listen to these ancient patterns with psychological ears. Myth is the dream of the collective, she said, its images pointing not outward, but inward. And so when a culture tells stories of warrior kings, peace weavers, wild seekers, or mystic intermediaries, we must ask, are these figures not also mirrors of the psychic archetypes within the types we now label OABAB? Perhaps these aren't modern discoveries at all, but old recognitions given new names. The thread that binds myth, blood, and destiny is not logic. It is resonance. Some feel a kinship with the warrior's oath, others with the priestess's silence. Some are born into the current of change, others into the structure of order. The point is not to assign fate by type, but to see that even our blood participates in the great story we call soul. And if we dare to remember it not through science alone, but through symbol, we might see that who we are is not random, but mythically informed. We are not just BAFTAs, we are chapters in an ancient tale. and our blood is the ink that still writes it. Individuation is not self-improvement. It is not the polishing of the ego until it gleams. It is descent into the forgotten, the disowned, the deeply personal and profoundly universal at once. Carl Jung described individuation as the soul's long journey toward wholeness, a process by which a person becomes who they truly are, not by adding more, but by remembering what was lost. And in this journey, the body is not incidental. It is the first symbol, the first text. The blood that flows within you marked A, B, A, or O is not an accident. It is part of your myth, your internal chemistry, your symbolic inheritance. To know your blood type is not to discover your fate, but to begin deciphering a pattern. Each type carries its own psychic rhythm. Type O is driven by will and survival, the fire that insists on forward motion. Type A holds the call to order and connection, the longing to shape the world into something safe. Type B embodies the fluid dance between freedom and presence, the desire to live unconstrained. OB weaves contradictions into a single breath, holding the tension of opposites without forcing a resolution. These qualities are not tasks, they are paths, and if followed consciously, they become doors to deeper awareness. Marie-Louise von Franz saw symbols not as decoration, but as instruction. The images that stir us, the traits that shape us, these are messages from the self, the deep center of our being. Blood, in its silent wisdom, may guide us toward that center, not through reason, but through resonance. You do not need to believe in symbols for them to move you. They speak with or without permission. To explore the archetype of your blood type is to ask, what is the energy I was born to refine, to challenge, to bring into the world with full awareness? Individuation asks that we face our shadow, embrace our contradictions, and step away from the collective mask. But it does not demand we abandon the body. On the contrary, it calls us deeper into it, not as flesh alone, but as story. Your blood is not just yours. It is ancestral, archetypal, and deeply personal. It links you to the instincts you've tried to repress and the potentials you've barely begun to claim. Its chemistry is your soul's fingerprint. This is not a process of fixing, but of unfolding. To know yourself fully, you must be willing to meet the parts that frighten you, that confuse you, that do not fit your idea of who you were supposed to be. The blood remembers, and in remembering it, you remember yourself, not the surface version, but the one who is always there, waiting beneath the noise. Individuation is not a destination, it is a devotion. And the blood, with its hidden symbols, its quiet pulse, is one of its oldest guides. To live symbolically is to listen differently to let the outer world reflect the inner one, and to read your own life as though it were myth, dream, or sacred text. This kind of awareness does not erase the ordinary, it deepens it. The meals you prepare, the arguments you have, the choices you make, each becomes a dialogue between your conscious self and the silent patterns moving beneath it. Your blood, once seen only as biological fact, becomes a thread in that dialogue, not a definition, but a direction. You are not reduced by your blood type, you are invited by it, invited to meet the parts of yourself that have always moved in that rhythm, instinctual or structured, curious or complex. And in that meeting, something softens. You stop trying to fix yourself into someone else's design. You begin to listen to the shape of your own soul. This is not about belief, it is about attention. Marie-Louise von Franz didn't ask us to believe in symbols. She asked us to live with them, to let them show us what we missed in our quest for control and certainty. Living with symbolic awareness means you no longer rush to label a conflict as bad, or a habit as broken. You begin to ask, instead, what is this pointing me toward? You see your blood type not as a category, but as a subtle language the self uses to guide you toward integration. If you are type O, you are not just a warrior, you are learning how to lead with soul, not force. If A, you are more than a harmonizer, you are remembering how to include yourself in the peace you create. If B, your freedom is not escape, it is a path toward presence. If OB, you are not lost in contradiction, you are the place where opposites touch. These are not roles to perform, they are energies to grow into, challenge, and redefine. The work is not to match your type perfectly, but to understand it symbolically, what it asks of you, what it reveals, where it stretches you. When you live this way, choices become clearer, relationships become more honest, even your struggles begin to feel less random, because you are no longer fighting your pattern, you are learning its wisdom. Symbolic living is not a philosophy. It is a practice. It requires curiosity, humility, and a willingness to slow down. But in that slowness, something begins to speak, a dream, a memory, a feeling that rises from the blood itself. You realize you are not here to fit someone else's map. You are here to draw your own, using the compass already inside you. The one you were born with. The one that beats just beneath your skin.